Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Hello, everyone. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support, for your practice, number one. And you're joining into our Sangha here. Welcome to all of you new subscribers. And for all of you who've been subscribed for some time, thank you for continuing your practice and participating. Incredibly gorgeous day today. Here in Northeast Mississippi, we have about 2 weeks in spring and 2 weeks in fall where the weather is just perfection. The rest of the year, meh. I find I'm more and more sensitive to that as I get older. Go figure. Anyway, I truly appreciate your support, your being here. Your support means that you subscribe and you participate, like videos, maybe make comments. If you're not that public of a person, you don't like using the comments, you can email me, tlksylvain@gmail.com. Or if you go through threefoldlotus.com, that email is threefoldlotus@hotmail.com. That's been around for long time. Anyway, I will respond to you. We are finally over 1,000 subscribers. Thank you again. That's all, of course. You're the subscribers, so yeah, that's on you. That's going to institute some changes here. And so I want to ask you to comment on this. I'm trying to, YouTube, certainly when I began YouTube, advertising was kind of sparse. It was there, but there wasn't a whole lot of it, and it was placed strategically. In this last, I don't know if it's just me, but in this last year alone, YouTube has gone nuts on advertising, and it is to the point where it's just hard to watch anything. You got to slog through all these ads. So I don't want because the mission of this channel is to support your practice and create a like-minded environment for us to practice Shakyamuni's teachings of the Lotus Sutra accurately with the scholarship of Nichiren and all of his scholarship through, Dengyo and so on and so forth, So, I'm not doing this channel as a profit-making venture. If there's a possibility to gain some financial support to keep this, because everything's expensive. You can't breathe today without having to pay somebody, right? So, yeah, to make some monetization, to make a little bit of money from the advertising engine, that could be helpful to this channel. But I've restricted the kinds of ads, like the ones you can't skip, and I'm trying to make it so they're not a distraction or so much of a distraction that you just stop listening or participating. So if it's a deal breaker for you, please let me know, because I'll back that stuff off. Again, that's not the goal of this channel. I'm not trying to be a master YouTuber as an income. That wasn't the motivation for this channel. It still isn't the motivation for this channel. And if it becomes an impediment, then I definitely want to minimize it or get rid of it entirely. So please don't hesitate to comment on this. Logically, Anyway, having said all that, let's get to why we're here. The Buddha Way, a rather provocative title for a chapter. Whether that's actually what the Vimalakirti, how it was set up in its original sermon, or what filter of different cultural translations this went through to become the English title, The Buddha Way, but it certainly is an indicator of what the Vimalakirti Sutra contains at this juncture. So let's get into it and let's see what it says. At that time, Manjushri asked Vimalakirti, how does the Bodhisattva go about mastering the Buddha way? Now, pay attention, because a lot of times I get this question, and I've asked this question of myself since I started practicing some 45 years ago or whenever it was, back in the Stone Age. And I've done different videos on this topic. What was that? Oh yeah, Buddha burnout or Buddhist burnout. That was pretty popular for a little while. And you can look that up. Just go to the home page of this channel. Click the little avatar icon. That'll take you to the home page of this channel. And you'll see a little magnifying glass there next to the playlist of videos about. And click on that magnifying glass. And that's a search within this channel. Don't use the search at the top, because that's all of YouTube. Just use within this channel and look for Buddhist burnout or Buddha burnout or just burnout, a key word, right? The more simple the search, the more effective. And it'll come up in the results set. And I talk a lot about it's our human nature. When we repeat things, first of all, repetition, incredibly important, because it trains our mind, yeah? But the opposite side of the coin of that is that repetition, though it trains our mind, our samsaric mind, which is, in our age, so accustomed to constant distraction that we've become dependent on distraction. What a perfect time to be Buddhist, yeah? And so we get bored. I can't believe I'm saying that, because Namo Myoho Renge Kyo is our invocation of our Buddha mind. It's so mind-bogglingly amazing. And yet we get bored of it. We start, what was it? One of you said, phoning it in. I know that's not an original statement, but when it applies to our Buddhist practice, yeah. Yeah, could you imagine? Hey, Bob, yeah, could you open my Butsudan right now and just point the phone at it? Okay, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Okay, thanks. What? I mean, if your practice starts to feel that way, stop. Stop. You're wasting your time. I know. Yes, but Sifu, if you just say Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, you're planting the seed of your Buddhahood. Yeah, maybe. At some point, when you're planting your field for Buddha-ness, and you put the seed in the ground and you water it, maybe you could justify putting the seed in the ground for a few days, but at some point you're just going to obliterate the ground with just seeds. At some point you've got to grow. Okay? And you can only grow by redoubling your resolute mind. Now, some people think that means, well, I've got to think of something else I need to do to motivate me to chant. Again, chanting isn't Aladdin's lamp. It's not a means by which you can get, you know where I'm going, because the whole getting thing is what we're trying to get away from. The getting is the delusion. We have everything all the time. Life is enlightenment. You need to take responsibility for motivating your mind. Remind yourself every single moment of your life, especially when you're sitting in front of your Butsudan and you're chanting, that this life is so amazing that it's beyond your grasp. And when you chant to invoke your Buddha-ness, chant to realize how beyond your grasp it is. Grasp deeper into the moment that is life. Your life, their life, this life, the universe. I don't know, look at pictures of James Webb telescope, images from through time. We have these time machines circling our planetary system in our solar system that are looking billions of years through to the past. These phenomenal energetic constructions. And if that's not enough, imagine that all of that amazing stuff is going on in your body right now. In your brain, in your toes. Every moment of every day, there are cells being produced of your karma, of your energies in action, creating brand new, manifesting little balls of tendencies and conditions, which are conditioned again by your DNA and your processes of your karma to go and say, okay, you are a liver cell. Go replace 3 and 4 over there. You are brain cell. You are blood cell. You are a white blood cell. That transformation is going on moment by moment in your body right now. It's absolutely incredible to think about that, because normally we don't think about that. We just take it for granted. Here I go. Oh, it's cold today. The processes at work in your existence, your experience of this moment, this moment, this moment, this moment, this moment. It's truly unfathomable. And here we are, just doing it. So I'm telling you, if you start feeling like you're phoning it in, you need to remind yourself of how absolutely incredible every breath is. I don't know about you, but for me, and I think for most people, that's what this study is about. The stories are interesting, somewhat entertaining, but that just leads to boredom. Oh, another one of these repetitive stories. It's not about the story. It's about what the story is trying to unearth, what the story is trying to show you about your mind. how the mind works, how the mind gels into habit energy, how the mind is so hard to unglue from its attachments, entanglements. And I don't care if you reread the same sutra 140 times a year. Every time you read it, something will go, oh, I've always thought that meant this, or maybe I didn't even think about its meaning at all. But suddenly there's something about, let me reread that. I think I understand. I think I get something different. Yeah, that's the very opposite of boredom. That, my friends, is more like a seed of your enlightenment. That's why study is one of the 3 pillars of our practice, because we need it. If we're going to be distracted, let's be distracted by something that brings us back to non-distraction. Everything we do in our practice, and this may sound controversial, but everything we do in our practice, and Nichiren's existence is about this, is about mechanisms, methodologies to take this samsaric engine of desire and possession and gaining and losing and shifting its focus to what's really going on, the bigger picture, the amazing actual picture. Not because what we're doing is intrinsically bad. It's how we got here. It's how we continue to be here. It's why we have sex. It's why we have all those exciting things to keep this mind active, going through time. But there's a glitch. That tremendous engine of desire that keeps a species alive and going, because of that mechanism of possession and gaining and losing and getting, we don't know how to turn it off. Not that we need to turn it off permanently. We don't want to annihilate it. Again, Buddhism isn't about getting rid of anything. But it is about learning how to turn a switch on and off so that we can what? Gain a better perspective on why all of this, how all of this, but that darn why. Let's solve that why. The only reason we don't know why is because we're wrapped up in the process. What process? There's the rub. You want to know what the process is? Unglue your mind from it. That's enlightenment. Learning to switch your mind into, wow, look at this process without being admired in it. Because when you're admired in the process, that's the area of stress, anxiety, got to get some, don't want to lose any. That's samsara. It's not an evil place. It's not a bad place, but it's a very difficult place. It's very stressful. It's very full of anxiety. The wonderful umbrella term we use for all of that is suffering. It's either physical pain, mental pain. You could argue it's all mental pain, right? So we're not trying to annihilate that. We're just trying to take moments of our existence and liberate, emancipate, become observers of. Right? And then with that detachment, with that, what's a better word than detachment? I know there's a better word, but it's more of an objective life than a subjective life. We tend to feel when we're in that world of desire, samsara, that somehow the life is happening to us. And that's a false image of what's happening because we're stressed, because we're anxious. But that's just part of being in the rapids, right? What person who likes canoeing and going down rapids would come out of the rapids after an hour-long ride and well, you're going to have different... The person who enjoys it's going to have a shit-eating grin on their face, yeah? Wow, that was amazing. My heart was pumping. They're a little bit more... They're subjectively going through the rapids, but they're staying somewhat objective and realizing that the whole thrill of the ride is the benefit of doing it. And then another person will come out halfway through having hit a rock or not being able to roll back over easily or having the shit scared out of them. I'm never doing that again. Right? Because the rapids happened to that person. How do we sort out all of these experiences? Namo Myoho Renge-kyo. By gaining our objective mind of amazement with all of this and thinking, wow, that was amazing. I don't think I want to do it again, but I'd have a super deep appreciation for what it is to be canoeing in those rapids. Oh my goodness. Yeah? A much healthier way to live this life. A more detached, but see, I don't like detached because that kind of means no more of that. That's not what we're saying. We're saying, that's amazing, but I don't have to be concerned about getting more of that, pushing that away. That is what that is. And my ability to objectify my life is very comforting. It takes away my stress and anxiety about having that, losing that whole mechanism of possession, ownership, gain, loss, the endless chase. It's all part of the process. It's not happening to you. And as I have often said, it's happening for us. How do you mean it's happening for our perception, for our depth of appreciation? See, from that mindset, obstacles aren't obstacles. They're just facts of instantiations, potentials being manifest. We don't want to be frightened by them, by the way life works, any more than the solar system is frightened at a quasar 10 or 100 billion light years in the past that we can see through telescopes. It shouldn't frighten us. It should amaze us, because that amazingly light years broad explosion in space represents the formations of you and me. That's how magnificent you and I are. See, when you become objective about life, your depth of appreciation for it magnifies. When we're stuck in stressing about the particulars of the gainings and lossings, the gainings and losing of stuff in life, the life becomes very small. It shrinks down to this moment by moment survival. Believe me, there's nothing to survive here. That's dragging the baggage of the past along with you. There is no survival. There is only being. See, there's quite a mind shift going on here. So the question, how does Bodhisattva go about mastering the Buddha way? How do we live in that mindset that's totally appreciative, compassionate, amazed by each and every moment of life? How do we do that? As a Bodhisattva, we never lose our grounding state of samsara. But how do we incorporate that observer into the rapids? Vimalakirti says, the Bodhisattva should follow a path that is not the way. Then he can master the Buddha way. Ooh, this is going to get meaty now. So you're telling me that in order to follow the Buddha way, I need to set a path, samsara, in this human form. I need to set a path for my mind that is not in the Buddha way. It's a little bit intimidating. What do you mean, Vimalakirti? Vimalakirti, okay, so Manjushri, obviously, how does the Bodhisattva follow a path that is not the way? I mean, that would seem to be the default position, yeah? But he's saying follow that path, not just have no path. Vimalakirti replies, if the Bodhisattva goes to the region of the 5 erroneous views that lead to the hell of incessant suffering, now we've covered what the hell of incessant suffering is before, but I will remind you briefly. When we live in the rapids, as I've already started that analogy, but we don't know how to control the canoe, maybe no good friend was around to put a helmet on our heads, and we're just being tossed by the waves, turning over, almost drowning, hitting the ground, getting cut up. That's the hell of incessant suffering. In other words, samsara. It is no other place. But when you plummet through life, when you just think of life happening to you, you poor victim, and you're just waiting to react to whatever happens to you, well, that is the hell of incessant suffering. Why is it incessant? Because you're not even trying to get the hell out of that. You're just letting yourself get thrown into the rocks. You're not even looking forward. In fact, you're more likely just staring on the past. Look what I'm losing. Ah! It's amazing how many human beings live their entire lives that way. You don't want to do that. Right? And when he talks about the 5, he's talking about the lower realms, right? Hell, hunger, animality, anger. That's the hell of incessant suffering right there in those realms. He shows no anguish or anger. If the Bodhisattva goes to the region of those lower realms that leads to the hell of incessant suffering, samsara, he shows no anguish or anger. Ah, that's not a regular falling through life person. That's a bodhisattva coursing as a bodhisattva in the samsaric hell of incessant suffering. That's you and I. We're bodhisattvas. Why? What makes us bodhisattvas? Because we know enlightenment is real. We know there's a different way to perceive this hell of incessant suffering. We can actually course through the hell of incessant suffering without being burned by it, without being engaged in it. We can go to the competition of the foremost canoeist on the side of the rapid, hear the rushing water, watch their skills without even getting wet. We can do that with our minds. He arrives in hell, but is free of offense or defilement. He arrives in the realm of beasts, right? But without the fault of stupidity or arrogance. Right? If you're standing next to the rapids, are you full of fear of having your head smashed? Well, no, you understand that fear and you can appreciate why one would feel it. Oh, that sounds like maybe compassion. But you're not fearing for your own. You're not in the rapids. You're right next to them. You're adjacent to the hell of incessant suffering. You're with the others, the other minds, so that you can influence them. Oh, right, bodhisattva. You got to decode this story. He arrives in the realm of the hungry spirits, yet is fully endowed with merits. That's another way of saying, I see all around me this insatiable engine of desire in everyone, but I'm not sucked into it. Merits, in this case, being unsucked in. Detached, objective, observer. He goes to the world of form and the world of formlessness, but he makes no boast of this. Right, because that would be arrogant. Oh, I'm so worried about my son is in the race. Oh, but you can rise above that. Really? That's what you're going to say? Because you're so wonderful and beyond understanding? Arrogance, right? He shows greed and desire in his actions, because that's how he shows, that's how he's perceived. We may be perceived as being greedy and desirous in our actions. But that's only because we're coursing within that realm. As bodhisattvas, we're detached from those behaviors, but we communicate in the same languages. We use the same behaviors. What we do with them and how we perceive them. See, that's the hardest lesson. That's the fountain analogy. You can look that up too on this channel. We perceive unique to our own karmic freight train and our enlightenment, our seed of Buddhahood. Our Buddha wisdom is the path our mind takes to enlightenment. We can't expect everyone else to see the way what we see, especially if we're using the same language that they use. They, with their conditions and tendencies, their filters of reality, will experience us the way they experience, not us. Don't take it as a personal slight if people don't understand you. How can they? They have a subjective mind. Yet is removed from the stains of attachment. He shows anger in his actions, yet he has no anger or aversion toward living beings. I have a loud voice. Anyone who's watched this channel for a while knows that I'm quite expressive with my voice. But I can tell you, since childhood, many people have seen that as intimidating, as angry, or superior, or arrogant. That's their associations. I tell you, if I go back to my culture, if I could say that, right? French Canadian, and I go amongst that culture, they won't even perceive that I'm being bellicose, because they're going to be bellicose to me. That's just the way we communicate. He appears to be stupid, but utilizes wisdom to regulate his mind. Oh, yeah. You ever had that sensation that some people are looking at you like, you idiot? But that's them. That's not you. See, this is a real, I wonder if I did a video on that, taking offense. I've talked about it before, but I don't know if I made a specific video. The whole idea of taking offense, right? Because that's the subjective world. You're busy in your world of desires, getting and losing, and you're certainly willing to take offense. Anything for a rise. But that's silly if you break it down. Why would you take offense? No matter how much someone is insulting me, it makes me laugh because they're just expressing themselves. They're not saying anything about me. I know me. I'm not that. Unless I want to take that as something I need to feel. I need to collect insults. Woo! He appears stingy and grasping, yet relinquishes both inner and outer possessions, begrudging neither body or life. He appears to break the commandments, whatever that is, the English translation. Break, social rules of behavior, let's say. But in fact resides secure in the pure precepts. See, this was about precepts, not fricking commandments. Translations. And even then remains fearful of committing the smallest fault. What to a bodhisattva is a fault? Well, one would be allowing ourselves to take offense, slipping into entanglements. Those are the worst faults we can think of as bodhisattvas, because it takes us immediately away from our Buddha-ness. And where do we go? The hell of incessant suffering. Just life. Samsaric life. The attached idea, the grasping idea of life. Necessary for our survival, but precipitates stress and anxiety, and we don't need that. He seems angry and irascible. I'm certainly an embodiment of that appearance, yeah? And yet at all times is compassionate and forbearing. I'll say it again, Buddhism, attitude and intent. I may be perceived as being angry and irascible, right? I have a low tolerance for these bad translations and misinformation because of my compassion for you and I to get the message right. There aren't 40 different types of Buddha. There are innumerous types of paths to Buddha. He seems indolent and lazy, yet works diligently to acquire merit. He seems disordered in thought, yet constantly practices meditation, active meditation. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. He seems stupid, yet, why do you have to say that again? Yet has mastered both worldly and otherworldly wisdom. Otherworldly, not alien. You know what worlds are in Buddhism, right? The realms of thought, the mind. Where does it reside? He appears fawning and deceitful, but is skilled in expedient means and faithful to the sutra doctrines. But that's a biggie for me. Well, I hate that word faithful, but what I'll say is that I'm committed, resolute in mind, to understand correctly the sutra doctrines. That all answers, as Nichiren is our guide. Friends, I have hundreds of videos on this channel that are just the words of Nichiren. And he pounds and pounds on this resolute mind and the meaning of Shakyamuni's words. The consistency throughout time, throughout lineage, throughout scholarship of the meaning of Shakyamuni's teachings. He's the most obsessed about that, certainly. For our age, he is the mentor, yes? All I'm doing is my level best to emulate him. He's my mentor. He appears haughty and arrogant, yet serves as a bridge and a crossing for living beings. He appears to be immersed in earthly desires, but his mind is at all times clear and pure. I don't know about clear, but the aim certainly is. We see him going among devils, yet he abides by the Buddha wisdom and heeds no other teaching. Be undistracted. You can see other things, but don't be distracted by entanglements. We see him going among voice hearers, but to living beings he preaches a law never heard before. We see him going among the Pratyeka Buddhas, but he manifests great pity in teaching and converting living beings. Humility, egolessness. He seems to be among the poor and destitute, yet he has jeweled hands capable of bestowing inexhaustible benefits. He seems to be crippled and deformed, yet possesses auspicious features, adorning himself wonderfully with them. I might say that differently. Again, this is a lot about attitude, intent, and then there's perception outside yourself. And though you have little control over those perceptions, you do influence them. It trickles in. This is what inspires others to glom around you who are in need, who are ready for, everyone's in need, who are close to being fertile for the seeds of Buddhahood to be planted in them. He seems to be crippled and deformed. He seems to be humble and lowly, yet is born into the seed and lineage of the Buddha, fully endowed with rewards. He seems to be among the puny and emancipated, the ugly and vile, yet acquires the body of a Narayana, a delight for all beings to see. So Narayana is an incarnation of Vishnu. That's Hinduism, so I'm not sure why we're using that example, but maybe, remember, Buddha was teaching these people 3,000 years ago, so this folklore, these ideas were wrapped in the culture, right? Inculcated in their birth. So he used a lot of their familiar terminologies to open their understanding to what he was teaching. I'm talking about Shakyamuni, of course. He seems to be old and ailing, yet has forever cut off the roots of illness and transcended the fear of death. Do you see what coursing as a bodhisattva means now? There's no denial. There's just a disconnection, an observational mind. From that perch, one can appreciate, not annihilate. That's the last thing you would want to do, right? Because that very hell of incessant suffering produces the Buddha mind. It's kind of a conundrum, isn't it? But to appreciate it thus is to know liberation and Buddha-ness. He appears to possess wealth, on the other hand, but habitually regards it as transient and in fact covets none of it. He seems to have wives, concubines, waiting women, yet never sullies himself in the bog of the 5 desires. Sullies meaning entanglements, attachments. He seems thick-tongued and clumsy in speech. Not me. Yet commands great eloquence and retains all he has learned, forgetting nothing. Though appearing to employ unorthodox methods of salvation, or liberation, better word, he follows the correct teaching in saving living beings. Something I hope to measure up to, yes? He appears to enter all the different paths of existence, yet he cuts himself off from their influence. He appears to have entered nirvana, yet never cuts himself off from the realm of birth and death, remaining here, just as, I will remind you, Shakyamuni. Shakyamuni was never, is never the Buddha. Bad terminology. Shakyamuni, good terminology. The great sage Muni of the Shakya clan, Shakyamuni, is a man coursing as a bodhisattva, teaching the Buddha way. One who has attained the Buddha way, but remained conscious and present as a bodhisattva in order to teach, spread, assist others in their own Buddha way. I don't know how to say it any more clearly. Manjushri, by going to places that are the opposite of the way in this fashion, the bodhisattva is able to master the Buddha way. Now, that's a critical equation. Because I know even for myself, a nagging little voice in the back of my head early in my practice, and maybe even not so early, I was raised in a culture, well, you guys already know, I was raised Roman Catholic. In a town where around every corner, not unlike here in Mississippi, there's some kind of steeple, although this is a Baptist area. Point is, the idea that awakening, enlightenment, Buddha-ness, somehow, like in the movies, like in the Matrix, when he says, load this program, suddenly you're someplace else. But, I mean, constantly we're talking about this. The Buddha-ness, and this is what Vimalakirti is talking about. Buddha-ness happens not anyplace else. It happens right here in the hell of incessant suffering. It's a paradigm shift. It's a mental shift. It's a changing of the guards, if you will. It's a mind going, what? Oh, look at all of this. Not, I'm drowning in all of this. But realizing, oh, I'm not drowning in all of this. All of this is serving the purpose of being. This is amazing. I'm still in it, but it's not happening to me anymore. It is happening of its own manufacture. And isn't that amazing? Do you see the shift? That's exactly what he's saying. Manjushri, by going to the places that are the opposite of the way, what you would think of as, why would I want to go into the hell of incessant suffering to attain my Buddhahood? It's not a matter of going there. It's a matter of your mind perceiving that this is the process of life, but it doesn't have to be perceived as the hell of incessant suffering, because the hell of incessant suffering is a mental decision that we make about the experience of all phenomena, about life. Change your mind. That's it. End of story. Close the books. Here's your A+. Here's your diploma. You're now a Buddhist. Oh, and by the way, do it. Oh, see, knowing about it, it's cool. It's good to understand. But now you must actually do it. It is in the doing that the experience comes. The Buddha experience. So if you approach your Butsudan and your Gohonzon in mind, your mandala in the Butsudan, as the connective point, the tissue that takes you to objective reasoning, Buddha-ness, that is what awaits your experience. How can you get lazy about it? How can you phone that in? You've lost something. You've missed it. Why are you missing it? You've gotten it before. You know it. You remember those moments when you had to go to court the next morning? And you went to your Butsudan going, Namo Myoho Geikyo, hanging on for dear life? Yeah, earthly desires are enlightenment. That's what that means. I don't mean set yourself up for suffering in order to get motivated to instantiate Buddha-ness. I'm saying realize the significance of it. Chant to realize the significance of it. Because that's all that matters. Your life is your life. You're going to go through it. Your karmic freight train is going to keep on running until it's done. Why not expand your understanding of it, your experience of it in each and every moment for every moment you have left? Don't rejoin the drudgery and get sucked into, as Vimalakirti is saying, the very entanglements that you're working so diligently to escape from. You will recognize how precious your practice is when you course in the hells of incessant suffering. That is enlightening in itself. Make sense? Vimalakirti then asked Manjushri, What may act as the seeds of the thus come one? And Manjushri says, well, the body is the seed. Ignorance and partiality are the seeds. Greed, anger, and stupidity are the seeds. The 4 topsy-turvy views are the seeds. The 5 obscurations are the seeds. The 6 sense media are the seeds. The 7 abodes of consciousness are the seeds. See, there were only 7 consciousness back then. They didn't understand the 9th consciousness yet. The 8 errors are the seeds. The 9 sources of anxiety are the seeds. Anxiety, there it is. And the 10 evil actions are the seeds. To sum it up, the 62 erroneous views and all the different kinds of earthly desires are all the seeds of the Buddha. Vimalakirti says, what do you mean by that? Okay, well, Manjushri replies, a person who has perceived the uncreated nature of reality and entered into correct understanding cannot again set his mind on attaining Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. The lotus does not grow on the upland plain. The lotus grows in the mud and mire of a damp, low-lying place. In the same way, the Buddha law can never grow in a person who has perceived the uncreated nature of reality and entered into correct understanding. It is only when living beings are in the midst of the mire of earthly desires that they turn to the Buddha law. If you plant seeds in the sky, they will never grow. Only when you plant them in the well-manured soil can they sprout and flourish. In the same way, the Buddha law can never grow in a person who has perceived the uncreated nature of reality and entered into correct understanding. But one who entertains egoistic views as huge as Mount Sumeru can still set his mind on the attainment of Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. From this you should understand that all the various earthly desires are the seeds of the thus come one. If you do not descend into the vast ocean, you can never acquire a priceless pearl. In the same way, if you do not enter the great sea of earthly desires, you can never acquire the treasure of comprehensive wisdom. At that time, Mahakashyapa sighed and said, "Oh, excellent, excellent, Manjushri. These words are aptly spoken. It is indeed just as you say. Those who are troubled by the passions are the seeds of the thus come one. But persons such as us, the voice hearers, the Shravakas, are now no longer capable of setting our minds on the attainment of Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi." That's what they keep telling us, right? We've scorched the seeds, remember? Even those who have committed the 5 heinous errors that lead to the hell of incessant suffering, get sucked into the entanglements of the lower realms, can still arouse aspirations that will afford growth to the Buddha law. But now we can never rouse such aspirations. We are like persons whose faculties are impaired and no longer satisfy the 5 desires. The voice hearers who have cut off all entanglements are like this, for they have no longer benefit from the Buddha law. See, we're already there. Nor will they ever have desire to. Interesting. In this sense, Manjushri, the common mortal, responds with gratitude to the Buddha law, but the voice hearers do not. Why do I say this? Because when the common mortal hears the Buddha law, he can set his mind on attaining the unsurpassed way, determined that the 3 treasures shall never perish. The 3, Buddha, the law, the abode. But the voice hearer may hear of the Buddha's law and powers and fearlessness to the end of his life and yet never be capable of arousing in himself an aspiration for the unsurpassed way. Now, that's not what you and I understand because we practice the Lotus Sutra, but this is a foible of the day, yes? The obstacle of Hinayana. At that time, there was in the assembly a bodhisattva named Universally Manifested Physical Body. Could you imagine roll call in the elementary school of these bodhisattvas? These names are amazing. And he asked Vimalakirti, layman, your father and mother, wife and children, relatives, retainers, clerks, people and friends, who are they? Your maids and men servants, your elephants, horses, and carriages, where are they? Vimalakirti replied with the following verse. And we'll close on this one because it's getting long here. Wisdom is the bodhisattva's mother. Not your mother, not my mother. Our bodhisattva living with the Buddha way in the hell of incessant suffering, samsara. Wisdom is the bodhisattva's mother. Expedient means his father. Of those who guide and teach all beings, there are none not born of these. Dharma joy is his wife. Pity and compassion of mind are his daughters. The good mind and sincerity his sons. Final emptiness and tranquility his dwelling. For disciples he has the many dusts and passions. They follow the dictates of his will. The 37 elements of the way are his good friends. Through them he gains correct enlightenment. The paramitas are his dharma companions. The 4 methods of winning others, his singing girls. For songs they carol the words of the dharma, such is the music made for him. In the garden of full retention of the teachings grow to the trees of the law free of outflows. Their wonderful blossoms are the 7 factors of enlightenment, their fruit, emancipation, and wisdom. On the bathing pool of the 8 emancipations, brimming with clear waters of meditation, spread the lotuses of the 7 purities. Those who bathe there are spotless. His elephants and horses race the 5 roads of transcendental powers. For chariot he has the great vehicle. Controlling, directing with the single mind, he travels the 8-fold path. With Buddha wisdom, we behave constructive, influentially toward enlightenment. Our environments being a mirror of our very life state, yeah? His form displays all the auspicious marks. Every good feature adorns him. He is clothed in the garments of shame and remorse, a deeply searching mind, his garland. For wealth he has the treasure of the 7 assets, which he teaches to others, enriching them. He practices as the teachings direct. His great profits he shares with others. His couch is the 4 meditations, where the pure way of life is born. He hears much, augmenting his wisdom, sounding the call of self-awakening. Pointing to the Lotus Sutra, which hasn't been taught yet. But self-awakening. Again, I point out, Shakyamuni's teachings never changed, but the perception of his teachings, because of the minds and their capacity at those times, changed. Yeah. The sweet dew of the law is his food, sauced with the flavor of emancipation. He bathes in purification of the mind, anointing himself with the perfume of the precepts. He wipes out the thieves of earthly desires. His valor cannot be outshone. He conquers and subdues the 4 kinds of devils. His victory banners fly over the place of practice. Though he knows there is no arising or extinction, He undergoes birth so that he may instruct others. In every land he manifests himself. Like the sun, nowhere is he not seen. And again, I remind you, this is talking about maintaining a mind of Buddha-ness, a clear, objective mind, while coursing in the defiled land of beliefs and attachments and entanglements. But being like Teflon, not letting that stick. To the countless millions of thus come ones of the 10 directions, he gives alms. He never thinks of these Buddhas as in any way separate from himself. Kabong. So, to those who chant Amida Buddha or Nembutsu or any other Buddha in order to attain enlightenment, what they don't understand is Buddha is Buddha. And their perception of enlightenment is their access, their portal, their gohanzon to Buddha. There is no personal Buddha. There is no person that is Buddha. There is no different Buddha that works in different ways. Buddha is Buddha. Let me read it again. Yet he never thinks of these Buddhas from all over the universe as in any way separate from himself, because our process of being is Buddha. But our mind can perceive it. Our mind can see it, understand it, participate in it, observe it, experience it. Without the mind, though he knows that the Buddha lands, along with living beings, are empty, they're just concepts, thoughts, experiences. Without experience, is there anything? Would you even be troubled by weather or a planet or the sun or the universe itself had you not a mind to conceive of it or to perceive it? Yeah? Though he knows that the Buddha lands, along with living beings, are empty, yet constantly he works to purify the lands, teaching and converting many beings. Because what are the lands, my friends? But our mental cognition, perception, experience of. The form and voice and behavior of every manner of living being, the Bodhisattva with his fearless powers can take on any of them in an instant. He understands all devilish affairs and can imitate the actions of devils. Wise in the skillful use of expedient means, he can manifest all such forms at will. Right? Sometimes we have to manifest some ugly thing in order for someone to realize what it is we're trying to break them loose from. We don't become that thing, but we know what it looks like, sounds like, acts like, right? At times he shows himself old, sick, dying in order to awaken living beings so they will realize that they are like conjured phantoms and gain understanding free of obstacles. Sometimes he shows the kalpa ending in flames, heaven and earth consumed with all else, so that people who think of these things as permanent will clearly perceive their impermanence. You know what? This is going to go on for a little bit. I'm not going to finish. Yeah, that's too long. So we will continue at this point of this wonderful verse in the next video, next podcast. But I think, just a reminder, this chapter is called The Buddha Way. So I like what this chapter is saying. I think it's really obvious that what we've been studying all along on this channel is that enlightenment, Buddha-ness, doesn't happen outside of this life experience. Whether you call it samsara, the hell of incessant suffering, or just ignorance, earthbound mortals, whatever. The point is, Buddha happens in the mind, not a separate or other place than this very life. The only distinguishing factor that makes it awakening, enlightenment, just like awakening from your sleep and dreams. You don't change form. You're still the same person. You're still in the same place. You still have all of your karmic energies, desires, attachments. But those attachments aren't. This is not an attachment. My thoughts about this, that's where the attachments lie. And that's the center of Buddhism. What is my attitude and my intent with this? Is it to see it as a wonderful tool for communicating with other beings to lead them to something much more beneficent, equanimous, liberated, not annihilating desires, but not feeling so dependent or codependent on their permanence, existence through time, but simply experiencing them moment to moment to moment so that you can be objective about your life. It's a mental shift. And it's one that takes, especially in our age of distractions, quite a commitment. Namo Myo Renge Kyo. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. If you can, use the Patreon link or go directly to PayPal and support this channel. If that's something outside your means, then please like, subscribe. That is your manner of support, and I accept that fully. They all have value, and they keep this channel going so we can keep our Sangha growing and get this teaching out to more people so that we can alleviate some of the world's suffering. There sure is plenty of it. Namo Myo Renge Kyo. Thank you for your efforts, for your practice. Remember to also pat yourself on the back every now and again. It can seem like a constant uphill climb, but that's just the nature of desire, isn't it? It's not a bad thing. Keep yourself motivated. Namo Myo Renge Kyo. I'll see you in the next one, okay? Take care of yourself. Keep your practice strong. Love your friends, even though they sometimes are unlovable. And I'll see you in the next one, okay? Bye for now.